Hello, everyone, and welcome back inside the locker room. Tyler Martineau and Max Sacco here with you today on 88.7 WRHU. And we are so excited to be able to talk about Hofstra men's and women's basketball. Both teams getting going. Their seasons strong in non-conference. We're so close to conference play, getting ready back into things. And Max, how are you doing? How is it having basketball back?
It's lovely, Tyler. I know you and I both, we like to go on site. We like to go call the games. Even if we got to do it with masks and we're not sitting on the court side, we're all the way up in the 200 level. But just being able to go back, get the experience, see the players, see the atmosphere, albeit with cardboard cutouts instead, which, by the way, you can find me, Hofstra student section, fourth row up. It's a fun experience just to be back and see the games in action and just see our teams in action as well.
And, just starting off, let's look at the Hofstra men's team, defending CAA champions. Obviously, we all know the story, not able to go to the national tournament last year, but looking at how they're starting 2-2, definitely have a strong core already in this starting lineup. And we're also seeing a lot of bench presence on this team. Max, I want to get your thoughts just starting off, what you're seeing from them going in through this non-conference schedule.
Well, it's Tyler, for me, I want to say it's concerning, but at the same time, I don't think it's that concerning. I look at their two losses. You lose to Rutgers. Okay, that's a top 25 team that is poised to make a deep run of the tournament. Whatever. And you lose to Iona. That's a Rick Pitino-led team, a Hall of Fame coach, his first time back in the NCAA. Like, that's a vendetta match for him. But other than that, though, the biggest concern for me has been sometimes this team just runs out of gas. And that happened in Stony Brook. They're up by 21 with 11 minutes left. I was lucky enough to be on the call with Andrew Bacigalupo. And I knew right away with that much time left, I was nervous, that clock just seems a little too big. It's not like they're up 21 with 5 minutes. That's 11 minutes. And obviously, Hofstra, you see the starters get rotated out. Jalen Ray's on the bench. Tariq Coburn's on the bench. Kante's on the bench. I give them credit, though. One starter was always in the game. But they just seem to slowly run out of gas, let up a bit, and then Stony Brook at one point cuts the lead to 3. This team is just playing with their opponents too much. They're letting them come back too much. We even saw that in Fairleigh Dickinson, too.
Yeah, and you look at that Stony Brook game, I was listening to it at halftime. It really seemed like Hofstra had it wrapped up, and as you mentioned, it just slipped away. But this is something that they struggled with last year as well, even into conference play, trying to finish games. And you talked about it being a little concerning, but we got to look at last year and how they started it, losing to San Jose State, and it seemed like the world was on fire. The preseason CAA first place team has already lost a game to a team that only won like 2 games the season prior, but they stepped it up. They found who they are. They located their top scorers in Eli Pemberton and DeJour Bowie, and that's what they're starting to do now as well. Losing those 2 players coming into this season, but having players like Tariq Coburn, who's able to step up. Jalen Ray, who you mentioned, he's starting to get it going. It was a question of, will he be that top scorer, as we tend to see from that kind of off-ball guard that Hofstra has, that elite scorer? Is that going to be him? But you also look at down low as well. Isaac Kante coming into the preseason as a CAA first-team player. He's going to have an elevated presence on this team, especially when you go into CAA play, which is coming up, and there aren't a lot of great forwards or centers in this conference that are going to be able to compete against him. And that's what we've already seen so far in non-conference schedule. We talked about Rutgers in that loss. They go up against a nationally ranked team with a player like Ron Harper Jr., who was great in the paint and was a great challenge for Isaac Kante. And I think that these games that we're seeing so far, whether it be a win or a loss, is really helping towards getting back into conference play here soon.
It is. And, I'm just still a little concerned with it, Tyler, is that we're seeing this team, though, at times just forget how to play and they let their opponent back in the game. What I do like, though, with it, though, is that they're at least integrating the bench a bit more last year. Interim head coach Mike Frelli has done a great job with that, he likes to play his bench. You've seen a lot of players play this year. A lot of people have played in most games. Only 2 players have not played in all 4 games yet, Trondarius Cowart and Vukasin Matic. They have played in only 3, but everybody else at some point has played in a game this year if they're not redshirting or out due to some sort of undisclosed injury. Everyone has played at some point this year, and it's shown on the score sheet because we're seeing a lot of offensive output from a lot of players who maybe last year we didn't see so much output, such as Omar Silverio.
Yeah, you're exactly right. Silverio, there's kind of a discussion on what his kind of role will be on this team, but I think he does a great job coming off the bench and alongside Kvonn Cramer, who I know we're both excited to see on the court every game, just what he can do just at every point of the court. But I think this is something that is changing with the current guidelines and current issues of this season, because you're going to be playing a lot of back-to-back games, especially when we get into the CAA part of the season. When you're playing games back-to-back days, this is what you need. You need more and more players coming off of the bench, and we're starting to see that. And then I think the biggest question is, what will this starting lineup look like in a couple of weeks when they start getting into playing teams in their conference? Will we see these same 5 players? Will we be seeing David Green staying on the starting lineup? You know, it took him a few games to even get his scoring going, but then we saw him in Stony Brook really step up. It looked like he was going to have a great game, getting those first few points early, but then not being able to score after that. But I think for him, in these next couple of games, especially when they play Monmouth coming up, he's going to start upping his game, especially on the offensive side, and really start scoring points for this team.
Well, that's where we need him, too, is the offensive side. You know, the starters this year, Tariq Coburn and Jalen Ray, they're kind of the scorers that you're looking for. Isaac Kante is a big who can score, but also he's going to double as your big. And then you have Kayla Burgess, who's your defensive guard. Burgess really doesn't score that much. He's only averaged this season about 4.8 points, second lowest starter. But Burgess has been used more as a defensive presence to work with double teams or adjust in the 2-3 zone. But for David Green, his big advantage that he's tall. Hofstra runs a bit of a smaller team. Isaac Kante, a bit of an undersized big at 6'7". David Green is also 6'7", so a huge presence for him starting is that he has height. He has that defensive height. For reference, Stony Brook had 4 players who were either 6'9" or taller, and 1 player even touching 7 foot as well. He didn't play that much, but still was in that height range. So with a smaller team, David Green's important because he just brings height to the lineup. If you ask me, though, Tyler, I would like to see Kvonn Cramer start in his place instead. The human highlight reel needs to start so we can see more of those dunks all game.
You know, I definitely agree with you. I'd love to see Kvonn Cramer on the court for every minute of the game, but I think it does have something to do with the injury that he is coming off of. But I do want to talk about Kayla Burgess, who you mentioned. And if you look at successful teams, especially in the CAA, it's teams that have a prolific scorer, and even if it's just that player, also someone that can create offense on the ball as well. And that is what we see from Kayla Burgess. He's not the guy that's putting up 20 points a game, even 25. He has players around him that can do that. Tariq Coburn, Jalen Ray, even Isaac Kante down low. But he is creating that offense for them, starting on the ball, getting them open, finding the right passes. And I think he is really a key contributor to this team, someone that we didn't really look at going into the season, and someone that kind of gets lost, especially in the stats when you're just looking at it, seeing who's scoring the most points, who's giving the most production to this team. And Burgess is really one of the biggest cogs in this machine to help them moving forward.
If you ask me, Tyler, I'd say he's one of the top 3 most important cogs in this machine. You know, you have the scoring of Tariq Coburn, who's leading the team with 18.8 points, miles ahead of Kante, who's second with 13. I think Kante is the second biggest player on this team because he brings an offensive and a defensive presence. He's a big who can do both. But there's a huge importance for Kayla Burgess because you're right. Every team has that one player who just is. They might not score that much. They might not get on the stat sheet that much, but they show up defensively. You see Burgess a lot in that 2-3 zone. He'll shift. He'll go to the double team, but the minute they don't want it anymore, he'll move right back into that corner pocket where he sits. It's either near or far side. He rotates a lot. But Kayla Burgess is a huge part of this team. And you have to just look. He's a guard that rebounds. He's a guard that gets steals so far this season. Burgess, 5 steals, 19 assists, 10 10 total rebounds. That's not something you see from a guard a lot. And he fights for those rebounds. Yes, guards get the rebounds where it kind of slips and, hey, I'm there. I'll take it. But Burgess will battle against other bigs to get that rebound. And that's what you want to see from a guard, a defensive-minded presence, and somebody who can bring some physicality to this team.
Yeah, it's something that Hofstra definitely wanted to see in any player that could step up into the starting lineup, because you look at DeJour Bowie last year, one of the best defensive players in the CAA over the past few years, especially in that guard spot, and could really control the game, really help out the defense. That is something that is huge in Coach Mike Farrelly's game. He's really been the mastermind of this defense over the past few years, and it's how they've been successful, not just running and scoring, how Hofstra has been known in the past, but really taking control on the defensive side. And it also comes down to the rebounds, as you mentioned. You talked about it earlier, how Hofstra tends to play smaller. It's really Isaac Kante and 4 kind of quote-unquote guards around him. And then, but it's all about the concerted team effort on the boards, and it goes from 1 through 5, especially when you're seeing Burgess really getting those rebounds as well. That's how they're able to stay in games if they're starting out from behind. But we've seen plenty of times that they can get out to the big leads. It's all about just finishing it in the end.
That is, and I want to see rebounds, Tyler, like you said. We got a schedule ahead for men's basketball. Let's take a quick peek. Tuesday, men's basketball will play Monmouth at Monmouth in West Long Branch, New Jersey, to make up for their season opener that was canceled due to a positive COVID test from the Monmouth side. And then later that week, they'll head up to St. Bonaventure and Olean, New York. So a 2-game road trip, starting their 3-game road trip to end out non-conference play. Tyler, 2 games this week. Which one has more of your attention on it?
I think first off, when you look at Monmouth, it's a game that really started things last year for the Pride. Really were able to take off from there. But I really want to see how the St. Bonaventure game goes, because if you look at Tariq Coburn, he's for us, it's always, oh yeah, he's been this Hofstra player, but he actually transferred here from St. Bonaventure, so it's kind of a coming home game for him. I definitely want to see them really step it up and try to get that win against St. Bonaventure, and I think it'll be an extra motivation for Coburn and his teammates around him now.
Tyler took the words out of my mouth. And for me, I'm also looking at the St. Bonaventure game for a bit of a different reason. Last season, that St. Bonaventure game was the first game back from their very long road trip where the team went to California, where they got the huge UCLA win. Then they went to Boca Raton, Florida, where they won the Boca Raton Invitational. And then they came back home for another basketball game where they played St. Bonaventure at St. Bonaventure and lost 45-73. So for me, this game to me is a revenge tour game. This is, do you know what? We're better rested this year. We haven't traveled the country. We're here. Let's dance. I want to see them show up and win, blow them out of the water. And last year, you have to remember, there was a game retirement for one of the former coaches. They were on a lot of factors went into that game last year that had a bit of an effect on them when they got there. But now going into this game, it's a clean slate. You have a nice 3-4 day break from Tuesday. You'll have Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. Obviously, you travel up probably Friday or Saturday. St. Bonaventure, not too close to the island. But I'm with you, Tyler. It's a revenge tour game for me, though, but a homecoming as well. I'm looking at that St. Bonaventure game 100%.
Yeah, and it's really, for me, especially all of us fans of a mid-major team, it's kind of, okay, when are we getting to conference play? When are we going to get to these games that kind of matter? But these ones also matter just as much in terms of getting ready for conference play. I had the chance to talk to Coach Mike Farrelly before the season, and even though with these COVID restrictions and you're not able to travel as much, he and teams not being able to play or as open to getting games going, but he still made an effort at trying to find teams that would challenge them and get them ready for when they start playing CAA teams and trying to get back to first place once again in the conference. And it's all about watching how they play in these games. We talked about it right from the beginning. Are we concerned? What are some things that they need to work on? And it's these games such as the St. Bonaventure or even the Monmouth game coming up that's going to make a big difference when they get closer to the CAA play.
They will, because if you underperform in these non-conference games, it can affect you when conference time comes. And this next 3-game stretch, because after this week, next week they play Richmond December 22nd for their last conference game, but we'll kick that can down the road to preview that later on next week. But for this upcoming week, this is a huge week because this is your first test of can you play a game, recover in 3 days, and go right back on the court, because right when conference play starts, for reference, they play William & Mary January 3rd on a Sunday. They have a 3-day break, and due to the CAA being a 10-team conference, so there's you play 9, they play Northeastern on January 7th, 3 days later. So this is the best test of can you play, recover, and go right back into the game. Because the Northeastern game, they play 1 here, 1 at Northeastern. But I think Mike Fairley and Joe Mahalik, hope he's doing well as well. But I think the Hofstra men's basketball staff did a great job at scheduling a good mix of tough opponents, a bit on the easier side, and just really working with what they could. They did a lot of work just working with teams in the New Jersey and New York area, minus Richmond, which is in Northern Virginia.
And, in a regular season, you play a team in the CAA, and then 3 weeks later you play them again, either at home or whatever, vice versa. But now you're playing them twice, either at home or away, in just with no days off. And so you have no time to recover. You have no time to make changes. So this is the time to be making those changes going forward.
This is a perfect time to make those changes. And now I think it's time that we change it up a bit here. We do have an interview to throw to, an interview to introduce today. Today, our own Jermaine Howerton, a.k.a. our men's basketball beat reporter, was able to speak to Kvonn Cramer about what it's like to come back from an injury like he had and now really show up on the court and have big influential performances. Let's hear it from Jermaine.
I'm Jermaine Howerton, a beat reporter for Hofstra men's basketball on behalf of WRHU. I also want to say congrats on the CAA Rookie of the Week. How did that – yeah, no problem. How does that feel, just getting that respect and getting that love from, the rest of the league?
It just feels great, not playing basketball for a long time, being back on the court and getting that recognition is just a great feeling to have.
You talk about that. So just talk about your journey for those who don't know. You made your debut for Hofstra November 29th, I believe, against Rutgers. You put in some work, 20 minutes of play, 8 and 4. Just talk about how you got there, the 2 ACL surgeries, then you redshirting that freshman year. Just elaborate on that a little bit.
Yeah, so my 10th grade year, going into my junior year of high school, I tore my ACL in a fall league game. I was out for at least 7 to 8 months before I had got my second surgery. So the second surgery occurred when I had got sick with strep throat. The illness had went down to my knee, and it ate up 60% of the graft inside my knee. So basically, it was nothing there. And me and my family had to decide to get another surgery or play my senior season at high school. Me and my family decided to have the second surgery, which led up to me having scheduled meetings with colleges, and my AAU director, Rob Brown, set up some meetings with schools. And one school was Hofstra, particularly. Thinking about Hofstra that stood out was they gave me a 5-year plan to come here. So that would lead up to me redshirting my first year, which was last year. And then just the redshirting helped me develop into a better player and to who I am now. And this is where we at.
So let's go back. So talk about the mental aspect. How are you able to stay positive? Because a lot of people, just one ACL injury, they'll feel something. Then they get another one. They're like, okay, maybe my body is defeating me. How were you able to stay in tune with all that? What did you resort to, I guess, to help you through this process?
It was just my support system I had backing me up. My family, my friends, they were just telling me that I could do it. I could do anything I put my mind to. And just having God by my side, it was just, I had the perfect package for me with my family, God, and my friends. They just helped me stay through and get through everything I needed to get through, along with physical therapy. It was a rough patch though. It was definitely a rough patch for me going through those 2 years of not playing basketball, knowing like having that in mind that I might not be able to play basketball again, but they didn't let me think that. They just let me stay positive, and that's what I did.
And how did it make you feel knowing that some of those schools were still rocking with you, giving you these 5-year plans? How did that make you feel?
It just made me feel like, oh yeah, these schools cared about me, and Hofstra, that school really, it stood out to me the most because they really cared to stay by me. They didn't want me to play my senior year. They didn't have to watch me play my senior year. It was like, oh, we're going to take this kid with knowing that he has the 2 ACL injuries.
Nice. And also, how did it feel? You know, it was a long time coming for you, 1,366 days of not playing competitive basketball. And then you check in and you get on that court. Like, what's going through your mind when you hit the floor?
My first thing was like, I was just, wow, this is happening. This is a dream come true. Like, I'm really here on the D1 stage playing basketball, all I ever wanted to do. So I'm just letting the moment sink in for a little bit. It was just an unforgettable moment.
And you talk about that redshirt season helping you out. What was, I guess, the most beneficial aspect of it? Was it the people that you were talking to, whether it was players and coaches, watching those guys from last year, or was it you just watching the game, watching the speed, and just watching the play?
Kind of both. Like watching the players, how they played, helped me develop into a better player. Like going against players like Eli, Shore, Isaac, Tariq, Jalen. It was just knowing like, oh, this is the stage of D1 basketball. This is what I got to do. And then just watching the game differently. It was just I just seen the game from a different aspect.
Got you. And you mentioned Tariq Coburn, Isaac Kante, different players along the lines of that. Who is that, I want to say, definitive leader of that team, both vocally and leading by action?
I would say our two seniors, Tariq and Jalen, and then we have Isaac. They're all terrific leaders on our team. You know, great leaders, help us stay together and lead the way for us.
All right, and you posted a double-double, 12 and 10. Like I said before, I got to call that game. What was going through your mind when you were slashing down the lane and you kind of took off by the logo? I'm like, no, I'm not to doing this right now. And sure, you did. Like, what was going through your mind in that whole play?
This just me. This is like who I am. Just like that right there is like an energy play for the team. Just the guy I am, the player I am. Just bringing energy to the team.
Got you. And 2 ACL surgeries. How are you still that bouncy? Is it just like the genetics, or was it that rehab that you were working hard? Like, just let me know.
I kind of want to say like I always been able to jump. Like my 8th grade year, I've been able to jump. Like it's just been insane. But like after the 2 surgeries, I think it was like the hard work I put in therapy. Got you.
And you guys are 2-2 right now. What are your overall thoughts on the season?
We just got to be the team that we are. We can't have those slack moments where we just come out and not have no energy at all, and then we do come out and we play with that energy. We just got to play with that energy all the time.
Got you. And that intensity and that energy, it definitely derives from the bench, and then it definitely comes from you guys' defensive play. I think you actually lead the team in steals. So just talk about like defense for you. What's your approach when you're on the defensive end?
I just want to be like the defensive anchor, man. Just be a leader on defense, talk vocally on defense. Whatever I can do is that deflections, blocks, taking a charge. I just want to be that man to do the dirty work for us.
Gotcha. So you're providing that energy aspect. Tariq Coburn said the same thing. Great energy guy. He's going to wake the CAA up, you along with David Green.
Mm-hmm.
Just talk about things that you may need to work on, because we know you could slash. We know you could take it into somebody's chest. We know you can still take the length of the floor and bang it on somebody. What does Kvonn Cramer need to work on?
For myself, shooting, free throws, man, ball handling. I can get better at that. I just gotta get in the gym, shoot my free throws every day, get in the gym, work on skills.
Gotcha. And when you're working on your game, do you work with fellow players or do you like work with like assistant coaches or something like that so you could get extra shots up, or you just go by yourself?
It depends. I could get a coach. We could get some shots up together, or it's days where we have our groups and we just go from there.
Got you. And who's that go-to guy for you on the team that you could just always resort to, or you guys just share jokes or something like that, or they're giving you advice? Like, who's that guy for you, that go-to guy?
Really anybody on the team I could just go to and talk and joke around with. It's like really anybody.
Got you. What else do I have? So what goals do you have individually? Obviously, you already got the Rookie of the Week. It's been a long time coming for you. Now you're getting that recognition. What more do you want at the end of the season from an individual aspect?
I just want to be the best player I could be. I want to win Rookie of the Year, also Sixth Man of the Year. There's two awards I have in mind, and I want to.
Okay, and what about the team? What do you guys expect this year? Another CAA chip or what?
That's the goal, another CAA championship.
Gotcha. Let's see what else I have. Did you expect to make this much of an impact? Because you came out the gate just acting like you've been in the league for probably 2 and 3 years. So did you expect to make this impact this quickly?
Actually, I did, because that's just who I am. That's just the player That's just the player I am.
Gotcha. And what do the coaches say to you in regards to your play, or things that they're saying, things that you can work on in regards to film? What goes on with that?
It's just tell me just be the player I am. Always bring that energy, because we're going to need it, because that's just who I am. The energy guy. Just always keep that with me.
And once again, thank you for taking the time out of your day. Saturday, 1:00 p.m. Yeah. It's not ideal for anybody, but
it's fine.
I appreciate that, man. Enjoy the day, my brother.
You too.
Peace.
And thank you to Jermaine Howerton for talking to Kvonn Cramer and really getting to know more about him. That was a great interview. But now let's transition over to the women's basketball team, who is also 2-2. But Max, if you look at this team, if you've been gone from watching Hofstra women's basketball for the past couple of seasons, this is a completely different team, and definitely very excited to see what they can do going forward.
I think the best way to put it, Tyler, is this is Danielle Santos-Atkinson's first team. Last year it was, here's kind of Krista's team mixed in with your team. This is now her first team. She's bought in the transfers. She's got the seniors. She's got the support from her team. This is her team now that she plays with, and it's shown up. They've had some tough losses, but their 2 wins, an 18-point win against Albany and the 3-point win against Army, have really shown just how much this team has come from last season.
And, the kind of rule of thumb generally is for a new coach is give them one kind of recruiting cycle. Once they get their first recruits all the way to their senior year, that's when you kind of start to judge them. But already what we're seeing from Coach Danielle Santos-Atkinson in her second season here, it's a completely changed team, revitalized. And I think the biggest thing, you look at some of the players, Jashani Knight coming in, Jayla Henry after having to sit out last season, and even Kayla Brown out there, the leading scorer of the team, Jalen Hines down low as well, staying once again. But the biggest thing that I'm noticing from this team is their confidence on the court, especially offensively. They're taking the chances. They're driving to the basket. If they have a slight opening for a three-point shot, they're going to take it. They're going to make it. And that has really been how they're able to get, so far, 2 wins on the season, and definitely look strong as we start to get a little closer to CAA play. Definitely think they can get at least 1 win in the conference play, move up from last year, but I think they can really make a run this year.
I 100% think they can get at least 1 win. I think this team is confident. You bring up the 3-point play. That is a little concerning. They're only 11 for 49 on the season compared to their opponents, who are 36 and 92. So not that much better, but overall, Hofstra shooting at about a 22.4% clip compared to about a 39% clip from opponents. So 3-point play is a little concerning because they are missing a couple open shots. But for me, this team, though, has made up for it on the inside, and that comes in large part to Jayla Henry and Kayla Brown. Kayla Brown this season shown up out of nowhere. last season a very big role player. This season shown up like you said, but Jayla Henry for me has been a huge important player for me. Sat out, and it looks like in 4 games this season she didn't even miss a game coming into this year.
Yeah, and last season, after every loss, it was either turnovers killed them or rebounding killed them. And so far this season, they've been able to out-rebound teams, and they've been able to kind of limit their turnovers to the point where they're forcing more turnovers than they're creating. But really, it comes down to now, you just mentioned it, the three-point play on both sides. We saw when they go up against great three-point shooters, especially in that Pittsburgh game, where there was just a couple points where there would be just a great shooter in the game, and then they just couldn't shut them down. Even in the Fairfield game, which I called the season prior, it ended in overtime. This one not as close, but in both games it was Lou Lopez Senechal, who's a great three-point shooter for Fairfield, who had 6 in the last game. And when they just aren't able to shut down these shooters, it doesn't matter if you can lock down the paint, get these rebounds, if they just keep going in.
Yeah, and coincidentally, Tyler, I was on the Fairfield game for this year. And yeah, Lou Lopez Senechal, 2 straight years, every time she took a 3, it seemed to go in. And though Fairfield couldn't get into the paint at all, the paint was locked down. And I give credit to Jalen Hines, Jayla Henry, Kayla Brown, those 3 for really making sure nobody could get in. The 3-ball has been a big weakness for this team, but I notice as games goes on, and especially in Albany, they are slowly stopping teams from taking more and more threes and starting to take more of their own and feel confident taking those threes as well.
And, just real quickly, moving over to some of the players, Kayla Brown, who's leading this team in scoring. And for me, it's not that big of a surprise seeing what she could do on the court last year. Really, when she had the space, when she drove to the basket, she was able to get the points, really kind of lead this team at some points of the season. But I think the biggest thing is if she can continue to work on her free throw shooting. So far, she's 16 for 22. And I think because of her style of play, when she drives to the basket, gets contact, is able to make the basket, if she can continue to work on her free throw game, she could get at least 20 points per game.
That's a tall margin, but I'm with you. I think, wow, Tyler, that's a high call there, but I agree with you. I think she can get 20 points. I think somebody that's really starting to wake up now is Jalen Hines. First 1 or 2 games kind of slow, and now she's really finding her footing again. But the person, I'm going to say her name again, Jayla Henry. I think we could see her averaging a double-double by the end of this season at the rate she's performing. 9.8 points right now, averaging about 7 rebounds a game. I think by the end of the season, we're going to have Jayla Henry on some CAA team, whether it be an all-conference team or an all-defensive team. She'll be on one of those teams, and it'll be because she's averaging a double-double.
I definitely agree. I was very excited to see what she could do on this team, and already in non-conference play, how she's been able to jump right in, really complement Jalen Hines down low as well. Now having these 2 players, Coach Daniel Santos Atkinson through last season tended to say, rebounding is a team effort, but right now this season it's getting a lot easier for the team when you have Henry and Hines down low to really help out there, and then you're giving a little less pressure for your guards to be able to make more plays, especially Jashani Knight on the defensive side, how she is able to just jump into every passing lane, already in double digits in steals. It seems like she is everywhere, wherever the ball is going on the defensive side. And then just on the offensive side as well for Jashani Knight, with 18 assists, but also 18 turnovers. So if you look at that just from the stats perspective, that's telling me that there's a 50-50% chance, 50-50 chance that she's either going to find a teammate for the basket or find an opponent on the turnover. And obviously not every turnover is just a pass right to the other team. But just looking at the stats, that's something that I think Jashani Knight can work on moving forward. But what she is able to do on the court and what she's already done for this Hofstra team has really been a big step up moving forward.
You took out the words. I was going to say, Tyler, we got to talk about your shiny knight, and you beat me to the punch. But she's been great this year, like you said. A starter playing nearly every minute of every game. The only game where she didn't play over a half hour of game time was the Fairfield game, and even then, that was 28 minutes of action. But she's been a huge factor for this team, and Coach Danielle Santos-Atkinson knew bringing her in that her Pitt transfers, Coach Santos-Atkinson recruited her to Pitt, coached her at Pitt, bought her now to Hofstra, where she's now head coaching her. So just a huge, huge, huge thing to bring her here, and especially women's basketball announcing this week on the Instagram, Sorella Neza and Selma Marsic going down with an injury, undisclosed, but she's been a huge help in filling in the shoes of last year's one of the all-rookie players.
Yeah, definitely. It was a huge boost for Hofstra when Jashani Knight was granted eligibility to play this year. And, I had the chance to kind of look back at how she was playing at Pittsburgh in her few minutes there. And you could really see when she was on the court, she brought some more energy there. And that's what we're already seeing on this Hofstra team, really able to complement players. We talked about it on the men's side, having a point guard who can complement your teammates around you, really get them to find more opportunities to score, especially with players down in the paint like Jalen Hines and Jayla Henry, or even with Kayla Brown right next to her, getting her open to make more drives to the paint. But you really look at this team, especially in their last game against Albany, no one is afraid to drive to the paint, whether it's 1 through 5. Everyone is ready to go at the forwards of the opposing teams and either get fouled or bring it right to the basket to get the points. We talked about it. It's a struggle on the three-point line. They're starting to get there, but really they're finding a lot of success going down low and really finding more options in the paint to score.
They are. And somebody who's been doing well at that, she doesn't shoot there a lot, but we got to mention her, Rosie Nicholson, another one of that big group of transfers that came in, not from Pittsburgh, but just transferring anyway. She came down from Stetson. But Rosie Nicholson, so far this season, her biggest game was versus Pittsburgh, where she had 17 points, but she's been great. Facilitating the ball, driving in, taking a tough hit. Not that much of a three-point shooter. Again, a lot of shots came at Pittsburgh after that. She only averages about 2 or 3 shots a game from beyond the arc, but she likes to attack inside if she needs to or go for the mid-range. And she's somebody, Tyler, like you said, is just aggressive, throw her body on the line to try to get the points and get this team ahead.
Yeah, and you look at this team, the starting 5 has really been the core. It's really where we're seeing a lot of points being scored, and I'm interested to see who will step up as we move forward, getting closer and closer to conference play, who are going to be those players that are coming off the bench so far, just having that strong presence on the court with the starting 5. But someone I think we have to mention is Val Valcourt, who since she's been at Hofstra, you just watch her play. She goes 100 miles an hour, so strong on the defensive side. Was in her freshman year kind of someone that would come in for a couple of minutes, really make a defensive stance, could get fouled driving to the paint, but had some struggles finishing on layups and contact down in the paint. But this year, we're seeing her score more and more often, bringing a more offensive approach to what we saw from her just on the defensive side and really bringing it together. She is someone who provides not just a lot of energy, but a lot of defensive and offensive production coming off bench.
She does, and it's been amazing to see her play like that too. And, she's energizing on the bench. She's not playing. She's cheering. She's screaming. She's getting her team riled up. She's a player to watch, and she's somebody, you're right, Tyler, who a couple seasons ago we saw just, go in, make a couple defensive plays, get out. That's it. But now, and especially at Army, we've seen her go from, all right, 2 defensive plays, get out, to a scorer, somebody who's not afraid to take the shot, somebody who's not afraid to pass, get the ball. She's become, honestly, a somewhat integral part of this team and more in the energy department. Maybe not scoring-wise, but she's become a huge facilitator and somebody who I'm happy to see is finally stepping up to take some of those bigger shots that we need to be taking this season.
Yeah, and when we started talking about this women's team earlier, we talked about the confidence, and I really think that Val Valcourt is kind of the symbol of the confidence that this team has now, what we've been able to see from her on the court and just the players around her, whether it be Kayla Brown scoring more or Jalen Hines having a bigger presence on this team. We're seeing the confidence, and wherever you want to say it's coming from, whether it be the newer transfers coming on the team or even Coach Daniel Santos Atkinson becoming more acclimated with this team, we're just seeing it more and more here with this with the Pride, and definitely a team that is way beyond where they were last year and can definitely compete going into conference play soon.
Well, Tyler, you posed the question. I'm going to ask it before we kind of take a look at our season ahead. I know I have my answer, but I want to hear it. Would you say the success early on for this team is coming more from Atkinson being more settled in on her second year, or for the transfers already getting really settled in this early into the season?
See, this is a tough question solely because I feel like you can't just give it to one person or credit to one player or one coach. I'd say possibly that it goes more towards Coach Santos Atkinson, despite, what we mentioned earlier with Jashani Knight, how her play at Pittsburgh has really translated well here at Hofstra as well. And this team, I think, is more excited, but I think it starts with who they are being coached under and just excited to play here. And so I think it starts with Coach Santos Atkinson, but I think there's confidence throughout with this whole team.
I don't know. For me, I'm leaning a bit more towards the players. I think you could have the best coach ever for women. You could have Gio Auriemma coaching this team. But if you have a season of transfers who still maybe aren't comfortable yet, I think it goes to the players more, that they're already getting comfortable in the Pride uniform and they're already performing at that next level needed to really propel this team forward.
Yeah, I think, as I said, I really think it's hard to say either way, but you're right. Looking at these players, they're the ones that are on the court. And so I think it matters what they do at the end of the day, because you mentioned it can be the best coach, but even when in the game, it's all about what the players can do, who's scoring the most baskets. And so as we look forward, moving towards going on here in the schedule, the next game is on Monday for the Hofstra women's basketball team, and it's Stony Brook. This is the Battle of Long Island. We saw it on the men's side, and despite Hofstra having the long-term advantage, it's been Stony Brook who's been owning this rivalry as of late.
Yeah, last year especially, Tyler. In that first year, the Battle of Long Island was not close. Stony Brook and Suffolk County took that one. Final score of that game right here is my computer loads 38-81 last year. That was the home opener for Coach Daniel Santos Atkinson as well, her first home game in the Battle of Long Island. But it was a tough game for them last year. And again, you look at last year's team versus this year's team, it's two completely different teams. But it should be interesting this year. Stony Brook's women's team last year only lost 2 games all season. They got all the way to the conference championship before their thing got shut down due to COVID-19. But they have a very strong women's team out east in Suffolk County, and it should be a battle this year. I think this year it's going to be closer, but Hofstra's really going to have to step up to a team that at some points last season were starting to receive votes.
Yeah, and I think it's really going to come down to who's taking care of the ball more. That obviously hurt Hofstra last season, but you look at the Stony team, they're sitting around 15 turnovers per game, and when Hofstra has been successful so far this year, they're forcing about 20 to 25 turnovers on the opponent's side because they're causing about 18 turnovers per game of their own. So I think it really comes down to, can Hofstra control the ball, really take care of it on the offensive side, and then just stay firm defensively behind Jashani Knight, who can force a lot of turnovers on the defensive side, but they have to be behind her. It's also on the glass. They kind of hold the advantage here. Hofstra does in terms of rebounds. Stony Brook hasn't been that great, having a minus 3 rebound margin, but against their opponents. So I think if Hofstra can control the glass and stay firm offensively, limiting their turnovers, they definitely have a great chance in this game.
They do. And what my answer to that is? Jayla Henry. She needs to have another Fairfield performance, put in a little more shooting from her players, and I think we could see them taking the series Right now it stands at 7-4 Hofstra, Tyler. But like you said, Tyler, Stony Brook has definitely clawed back to make this series a lot closer than it was a couple years ago. But we can't forget they got one more game this week against Fordham, Friday, 7 p.m. in the Boogie Down Bronx. Should be a good one. Tyler, last year they traveled to Fordham for the Holiday Classic. Never played Fordham. They played two teams while they were at Fordham. This year they'll play Fordham. Could you see that one being a tough match, or do you think that's a good test for the season ahead, the Fordham game?
Well, I definitely think it will be another tough matchup solely because Fordham can shoot the threes, only playing 2 games so far this season. But they have Anna DeWolf, who scored 46 points in her first 2 games. She's 5 for 10 from the three. Right behind her, Caitlin Downey, who's 6 for 13 from the beyond the arc. And so they don't just have one player who can really shoot the 3 ball well. It's 2 players that Hofstra needs to lock down. We talked about it earlier, the games that they've struggled in have been the ones with the great shooters, especially that Fairfield game. We talked about Lou Lopez Senechal. But now having these 2 players that can shoot the 3 really well so far to start the season, this is going to be a tough test to see how Hofstra's perimeter defense works.
Yeah, this will be a big test for them. I think the perimeter defense has been something that's been steadily improving all season. I think Fairfield was a bit of a step back in all honesty, but against Army, Albany, and Pittsburgh, it looked solid. And especially in that fourth quarter against Pittsburgh where they put a big comeback in, their defense looked good. But Tyler, we can talk all we want about women's basketball. We have somebody here who knows what he's talking about. Our women's basketball beat reporter, Tim Crowley, joining us now. Tim, thank you for joining us and bringing us around the Pride.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. Ready to go.
Yeah, all right. Let's do this. Tim, what do you got for us?
Well, this has been an interesting start to the season in terms of this conference. You have 7 of 10 teams around here that are over 500. You have your 2 undefeateds up top with Delaware and Drexel. And the only struggles that you're really seeing so far have been when you've seen a team in the CAA go up against their Power 5. And we've even seen 3 games already against nationally ranked teams. We obviously know about what happened with Charleston when they played South Carolina to start their season. You had Towson taking on Maryland. Those are really the only struggles that you've seen so far is, and even Hofstra too. They put up a pretty good fight against Pitt and going into the ACC and putting up their fight against the Power 5 team. But otherwise, you've seen some really good basketball so far out of the CAA. And the only team, you'll see Northeastern at some point once they move past the delay that they've had on their winter sports. Obviously, you'll see William and Mary get going at some point as well. But a really good start as a whole for this conference.
Yeah, a good start for sure for the Hofstra Pride, and for the rest of the conference, each team in the conference minus William and Mary above 500 or at 500. William and Mary sitting at 0-2, and like you said, Tim, Northeastern has not played yet due to a winter sports delay. But the CAA will be a bit of a competitive conference. If you ask me, I'm going to throw the hot take out there. I think some teams are stacking themselves with a bit of easier matchups. Hofstra chose to kind of go the harder route. Other teams, though, if you look at some of their opponents, are maybe choosing opponents just to get some feel-good wins under the belt. I know it's a bit of a hot take, I'm not going to lie, but I'm waiting for the schedule to load right now, and we should be able to see it. But looking back here, UNCW, they play a UNC Greensboro team. After that, they play South Carolina State. They're picking a bit of easier opponents to maybe build some confidence first, but it's those easier matchups that kill you later on when it's time to play tougher opponents in the CAA.
Yeah, Max, I think the biggest thing is that you were mentioning, it looks like a lot of teams are playing kind of easier opponents, but I think it really comes down to the state of our country right now with the pandemic and, playing locally. Yeah, there are some great teams, especially in the Carolinas, that you could play against. And Tim, you talked about some of these teams that are kind of finding some Power 5 conference teams to be able to play. And I think it comes down to how this conference meshes together, how they are able to compete against each other. We're seeing kind of all these schedules all over the place, Hofstra playing Pitt and then other teams playing lower schools. But it's going to come down to how competitive this conference will be as a whole. And I think with teams that were towards the bottom of the conference, especially Hofstra, becoming more competitive this season, we're going to see a much tougher CAA.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. And you're going to see that when this conference schedule gets started. You got to look at these teams that have played against these Power Five schools, match up how they've done. Look at Delaware. That's been a team that's really surprised me so far in terms of what they've been able to put together. They went in, you saw how Hofstra played against Pitt. Well, Delaware went in and beat Pitt, and they were doing it with a lot of scores as well. Jasmine Dickey has been awesome this year in terms of getting their scoring going on the offensive side. You can look at a team like Towson that, while they while they gave up over 100 points to Maryland, they still put up 78 points against a top 15 team in the nation. That's going to pay dividends when we get started in January for this conference.
That will. I think it will too. And I just, I want to touch back on the Delaware game. Delaware was picked as a top 5 team in this conference. I think we all knew ahead of this Delaware was going to be a tough team to play in this conference. And I think we all can say it one more time. Delaware, Drexel, JMU is your big 3 you're going to watch out for. You're going to see the matchup, and you're going to go, oh, no, here we go again with this one. But I got to look at Charleston. I'm looking at Charleston because I think before we can look all the way at the top, you have to look at who's right next to you. And Charleston was right above us. And Charleston lost to South Carolina horribly. The rest of their games have been against Division II schools or very, very tiny Division I schools like Wofford or North Carolina Wesleyan. Schools that play in like the Big Sun, the Western Athletic Conference, really tiny conferences that you don't hear about that much. So while some of the rest of the conference, like Delaware, is doing good against Power Fives, that's expected. But Tim, Pittsburgh last season only won 5 games in the ACC. So Delaware, who won nearly most of their CAA games, was primed to perform well against a Power 5 school. I think the question is just which one you're playing and when you're playing them.
Yeah, and I think Delaware definitely a strong team every year and just being able to beat Pitt. But you talked about Towson is scoring over 70 points in that game. And I'm also looking at how Hofstra's been playing so far in the regular season with their scoring 81 points in their first game of the season. You look, it's becoming less and less about taking advantage of turnovers and really playing a defensive style game. I definitely think going into CAA play, all of these teams are going to have a step up offensively, and we're going to see some high scoring games. We have a lot of great scorers in this conference. There were a couple great ones last year, but I definitely think it's going to be a lot more about scoring and offense and how well you can take advantage on the rebounding side, getting second chance opportunities, but we're going to see a lot more scoring in this conference.
Yeah, Tyler, I would totally agree with you there. And I guess the one thing that I'm going to look at once we get to January is which one of these teams can keep their scoring consistent? Because that's been the one thing is we've seen a lot of great scores. We talked about Towson, what players like Kiana Jeter have been doing. She's probably going to be looking at one of the best players in this conference this year. But you've also seen teams that be able to put up points. But then look at a team like Drexel that we just talked about as that top 3. They had a 6-point first quarter against Rider, and you've seen a couple other teams throughout the CAA have these really slow single-digit scoring quarters in games that really didn't make a lot of sense for the way that they've started so far. So whoever's going to be able to keep up that offensive consistency and do it at a high level like they have to their record so far in non-conference play, that's going to be a huge thing to look at when we get to January in CAA.
I'm going to say her name again, Jasmine Dickey, so far this season in 3 games, averaging 27.3 points. I think she'll be somebody who we're going to see that's going to just carry that over. I think the number is going to go down from 27. I think it's going to kind of settle around 20, 21. But I think she's going to be able to maintain that clip all season. Right behind her, Kiana Jeter Towson, same thing. She's at 25. We're going to see it drop to 20, 21. But she's going to maintain that shooting clip all season. Everybody else after, it kind of becomes a hodgepodge of people that are averaging about 13 to 15 points, all duking it out. And we're being separated by 14.1 to 14.0 points. This is a shooters conference, but I think we're going to see the top 2 shooters remain there, and it's going to make Delaware and Towson this year the teams to beat with a red circle when you see them on the schedule.
Yeah, I agree with you, Max. Just the scoring in this conference already at an all-time high, seeing them in non-conference play. And it'll be very interesting to see who are going to be these defensive players that are going to stand out on the other side, that are going to have to shut down these players. We talked a lot earlier about Deshani Knight from the guard position, leading the team in steals and probably going to be one of the best defensive players in this conference. But who are these players that the other teams in the CAA can rely around. You talked about Jasmine Dickey on the offensive side. Who's going to complement her on the defensive side for these teams?
Yeah, you guys put it right on. And I guess the final thing that I want to talk about and look at, whoever's going to have this depth off the bench as well, and depth in an offense. Hofstra's done a great job of that so far this season. You've seen numerous players averaging in double digits so far. That's what's made Delaware so strong early. They have so many players that can put up points every night. We talked about Jasmine Dickey, but also keep an eye out for players like Ty Battle, Paris McBride. They're going to have a role, and that's why Delaware's been great so far in terms of their depth. Look forward to that in conference play.
Well, Delaware, I want to highlight this now. Delaware, they have the number one scorer in the CAA right now in Jasmine Dickey, like you said. But right behind her, 3 Delaware players tied for 12. Ty Skinner, Paris McBride, Ty Battle, Tim, again, like you said. But they have 4 players within the top 15 scorers. Hofstra has none. You have Kayla Brown in 16th technically because of the 3-way tie at 12 fulfills 13, 14, and 15. So, and Kiana Washington is also with Drexel in that mix. So that fulfills 12 to 15 right there. But so Kayla Brown almost there at 12.8 points per game. But Delaware is going to be the team to beat this season. They have the shooters. They have a lot of home games. And there is talk of letting fans in. I think that's something we do need to mention here. Some schools in the CAA are allowing fans, like Charleston. Fans were there during the South Carolina game. So a small factor there. You come to Hofstra, you're playing at cardboard cutouts. You go to Charleston, you're playing with people there. So it's something to watch out for this year in the league is the scores. And I think Delaware is the team to watch out just based on their scoring. And I think to just look at rebounding really quick, Jasmine Dickey and Ty Battle within the top 6 as well for rebounding. They're going to be the team to watch for.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you, Max. You know, Delaware going to be the team to beat. Already what we're seeing from them so far in the non-conference play, they're definitely going to be someone that everyone else in the CAA is trying to beat.
Certainly important to bring up that fan aspect. I want to see how that's going to play an impact. But, let's not, totally forget about the MAC this season, Max. I know our cardboard cutouts are going to be ready to bring the energy. I know, we'll be across from each other. I'm up across from the student section. So don't forget that this is still going to be, obviously a rowdy crowd at the MAC this season.
It will. The cutouts always bring a lot of energy. But so does Val Valcourt and Caria Reynolds. Got to highlight them. So do they.
Great point.
All right, well, Tim, thank you very much for joining us for Beyond the Pride.
Thanks, guys. Talk to you soon.
Once again, that was Tim Crowley for our Beyond the Pride look. Tyler, you're going to be a tough conference this year in the CAA to play against, and especially with a team like Delaware who's getting hot early. It can probably carry that heat for the rest of the season.
Yeah, it definitely was, and Tim really brought up a lot of teams that can kind of compete around them as well. But I just have to bring it back to Hofstra every time, seeing what they are doing so far in the non-conference schedule. I think that it's going to be exciting to see what they can do if they can make some upsets happen and move up in the conference.
And that'll do it for today's episode of The Locker Room. Thank you very much for tuning in, wherever you tuned you in. Our wonderful producer this evening was Eliza Kravitz. Helping her out and getting us beyond the pride was our very own Tim Crowley. Giving us our special report with Kvonn Cramer was Jermaine Howerton. Thank you to that. And for my wonderful co-host, Tyler Martineau, I'm Max Sacco, saying thank you very much and stay safe, Long Island.